It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. But more importantly, it's a podcast about recovery, and we like to celebrate all things recovery. My name is Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt. And if you know somebody who needs some help, have them do what I did and give Pinnacle Recovery Center a call. They helped me out on my road to recovery. Dr. Matt, you look a little tired.
I am tired. I'm feeling good, though, but tired that we just got back from a almost week-long backpacking trip.
So is it safe to say you rode in on your high horse?
I rode out on a high horse. I walked home.
Did you?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was a good time?
Yeah, we did. We took horses in about 20 miles up in the Wind Rivers, Wyoming, and then packed around, went up to the Continental Divide and fished, and then packed out.
Good time, family fun?
Oh, yeah, it's great. We do it every year, so it's a lot of fun.
You know, and I think those trips are probably the most important things well, not the most important things, but one of the most important when growing up with your kids. Because, you know, a lot of times we put all this emphasis on Christmas or gifts or presents, and you ask them 2 years later, they can't remember what they got.
Oh, no.
But they'll never forget that time they went with you to the Continental Divide.
No, I've been surprised over the years. Even it's hard backpacking. I mean, you raise, up to almost 12,000 feet in elevation, and we pack hard, and, you're sleeping on the ground and all that kind of stuff, mosquito bites and whatnot. And yet
you're a doctor.
And yet my kids will say that those are some of their funnest memories. And as they're getting to be young adults now, it's nice that they want to keep doing that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think those are much better than great gifts at Christmas, sure.
That's great. And, as you're doing that, I'm celebrating the complexity of life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that sounds heavy.
It was heavy, man. So 2 weeks ago, I lost a friend.
Right, we talked about
to an overdose.
How are you doing with that?
I'm doing okay. There's going to be a celebration this weekend, so I'm going to go see a bunch of friends and kind of begin the healing. Good. I think the anger is still there, but it's mostly...
I need to apologize to you about that.
What?
I think. My girlfriend told me that she felt like I wasn't empathetic enough to you when you brought that up last time.
No, I think
she said I was just kind of said, "Oh,
no,"
but I didn't mean to. I mean, I.
But here's the thing: it's the reality is we do a podcast where we talk about heavy stuff all the time.
Heavy stuff, yeah.
And sometimes it's easier when you're removed from the actual situation and just hearing it as a story. You didn't know this guy.
No, I didn't know him, but I mean, I've had. Shortly after high school, a friend committed suicide, and over the years, as you get older, you lose people that you're close with in various ways, and it's heavy, but it's real life. And what I think is the best thing you can do is talk about it, reach out, get some support. So I'm glad you brought it up on the show, and if I didn't seem empathetic enough, I
think
apologize.
You handled it appropriately.
Okay.
But
you guys are going now because that's one thing I asked last time was, are you guys as friends getting together to kind of memorialize
what
or celebrate?
His dad's going to do is have a celebration of life.
Right.
And this dude was always known to wear flip-flops. So it said, come to the park, bring your flip-flops, and some food, and then they're going to release some balloons and kind of share the stories. And so I think that's going to be really good because a lot of these guys I haven't seen for 10, 15 years.
So many people resist doing those sorts of things when they're in their grief, which is understandable to a point. But if you're in that situation that Casey's in right now, I highly recommend reaching out to the network of people that have also lost the person that you've lost and celebrate that life together. It is very healing. It's very important.
I like the idea of celebrating his life.
Right.
And so that's what we're going to do, and we'll go celebrate, and I think that'll help me bring a little closure to it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the only thing I've been dealing with. So recently, with the Facebook page and this podcast, I get a lot of people reaching out to me.
Right. I've given you the honorary title of social worker.
Yeah, and it's something that I hold dearly.
No, I know you do.
And I want to help as much as I can. But 4 friends that I've met, through recovery and have known before recovery have recently relapsed.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And I don't know why I take it so personal. and I'm still trying to map that out in my head, but I do take it personal. But the reality is there's nothing I could have done to stop them from doing it. I mean, I've been there. My phone's, they can call anytime. I'll do whatever I can, but I can't make them not drink.
No, I think you've said what other therapists have said before, and I've heard this a lot, is that the other people involved can't want the sobriety more than the person who's in recovery.
Yeah, and so I mean, I can listen to them, but sometimes it takes me on this emotional roller coaster where I think everything's going great, and then I hear from a friend and it's not going great.
Yeah, that's hard.
And I know what they're going to do. And the funny thing is, and it's not funny, but I sit there and I talk to them and I go, I know what you're doing right now. You're beating yourself up. Your anxiety. You're trying to figure it out and what's your next move. And I said the easiest move is not to drink. And I was telling Cole, he's our guest. We're going to introduce him in here in just a second because he gave me a ride down here.
Already?
Yeah, he's from Ogden. So I sent him a text this morning at the gym. I said, hey, are you coming from Ogden? The reason I'm asking is if you are, could you stop by and pick me up? And he said, sure.
Wow. Okay, Cole, you're a good man.
But I said, we were just having a talk on the way down, and I said, in recovery for me, the easiest thing to do is not drink. Mm-hmm. That's the easiest thing for me. And that makes some people mad, and some people really have a hard time.
Some people would say that's the hardest thing.
The hardest part is doing life. The hardest part for me is getting it all back and managing life and managing my feelings and doing all the other stuff that I need to be doing. Yeah. The easy part is not drinking.
Well, yeah, that's a really Casey Scott optimistic way of looking at it.
I could see beer and I could do that, and it doesn't even cross my mind to grab a beer. I've never thought once that throughout this whole process, you know what's going to make this better? A beer.
Because it's going to make it worse.
And I know that. I know that 100%.
But it's hard to shift that mindset, right? That's more than half the battle is shifting your mindset into that frame of reference.
And if people ask me how I did it, I couldn't tell you how. I just know that that's not going to do it. But the hard part is, not being able to take my kids to the movies or doing these things that I put myself in the situation that I can't get out of. Right. And those beat me up. And those, but then I look at the other side of the coin and I go, I'm not in prison. Right. I've got these opportunities. So, yeah, this does suck, and I got to sit in it because I created it. Right. But it will pass.
It's getting better, I think, right?
Yeah. If I can just get all our guests to come from Ogden, then I'll never have a problem getting a ride.
Exactly. Ogden guests only for the next year and a half.
Yeah. Hey, so we want to introduce you to our guest today, and he's got a fascinating story, and what he's doing now is even more amazing. But let me introduce you to my ride, my friend, Cole Thorpe. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Now, Cole, I can't remember how we got connected, but we went to lunch, and I said, I want you on this podcast, and you said you want me to MC some events for you, and we're going to talk about the events. But, Cole, how does your story begin?
My story begins when I was young. I always walked around with some level of worry. I mean, even when I was a little kid, I always had this kind of, like my mom would go to the grocery store, and I'd think, okay, well, who's going to go with her? I would worry about her.
Safety concerns.
Yeah, as a young kid. And then, as life gets going and things get happening, you get into junior high and high school, and that there was always something to worry about. Now, I never worried enough to actually do something about those things like grades and different things like that. It was like a debilitating worry.
And if you had what we call generalized anxiety disorder, which it sounds like that's what you're describing, to be honest, getting better grades wouldn't have necessarily helped. Your anxiety would just floated into some other area of life. And so a lot of people growing up, and I kind of see where your story's going, struggle with that. And that's an important thing for the listeners to pay attention to, is if you or your kids kind of have this free-floating general anxiety, it can be really tough.
But we often called kids on the playground that, he's a worrier.
And I was
worrywart, and I was the exact opposite. I didn't have any worries.
No, that's not you at all.
It wasn't, but it's still not.
I know. I was very outgoing with it. I mean, I was very outgoing and confident on the outside.
But probably things that related to like safety and other sort of things were a real hassle for your brain, right?
They were, and people being upset at me because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do and things like that. That stuff really bothered me. But on the outside, I was confident. I was cool. I'm not saying I was cool, but
you're pretty cool.
I don't know if I'm cool, but
you're a tall drink of water.
I projected something that I wasn't, and I hid that on the inside. No one had any idea that on the inside, all I did was just stew and worry over things constantly, And so then, I was a sophomore in high school, and the opportunity came around to have a drink, and I took it, and for the first time in my life, that worry disappeared,
gone,
and I felt completely free. And I
felt like you just got the answer.
I did, yeah, absolutely. Now, in high school, from there, I did it more, and I mean, looking back, there were people that drank way more than I did and did all sorts of drugs. I never thought that I drank or used any more or any less than my friends. But I always had that same effect that, anything that I was worried about, anything that I felt down about or was beating myself up about, because I did that constantly as well. Anything that I did, that was my release valve.
Sometimes they call alcohol the social lubricant, and what they mean, one of the meanings there is that it just helps you relax and feel confident and comfortable, and you can interact and feel like your best self instead of your anxious self.
But when you take that drink, because it did the same thing for me, you said, "Oh, this must be how everybody else feels."
Yeah, you kind of assume, I didn't know I could feel this way. This must be how everyone else is.
Yeah. And I did feel that. And one thing, kind of, you were talking just about life and about things. For me, that was my medicine. That was what I used. That was what I used to handle and cope with what was going on the inside. Like I said, on the outside, you would have never known. But on the inside, I was a scared little boy, just walking around. And I would throw myself into situations, sports and things that there were a lot of pressure and stuff. And I did really well in those. But nothing could shake that feeling except drugs or alcohol.
You say a scared little boy, but you're probably, 6'3"?
Yeah.
200 pounds?
Yep.
And full of muscles?
I don't know. No, not full of muscles.
You're pretty yoked, Joe. But to say that you're a scared little boy, I mean, that's really because everybody else is seeing this menacing guy, and inside you feel scared.
Yeah, and you don't want to talk about that as a guy growing up in high school.
You don't talk about that in the huddle.
High school. No, you're not going to walk around and just say, "Hey, I'm really scared right now."
The last thing you talk about are your insecurities when you're growing up, right?
Right, absolutely.
You overcompensate.
Right, and then you get yoked.
Yeah.
But no, I wasn't going to let anybody in on that secret. I wasn't going to tell anybody, hey,
So even your parents, did you ever open up about your worries with family?
No, because I didn't want to impose on them.
And it might have felt a little embarrassing. A lot of people that come and work with me on anxiety tell the exact same story that you're telling. There's so many people out there that feel that way, and nobody ever talks about it, so you think you're alone. And when you're growing up as a kid, you think you're the only one that has whatever problem you have because you're a kid. And by keeping it to yourself, you start to feel strange and more alienated and detached as you grow up. And so if even your parents didn't know, that must have been pretty lonely and difficult to manage as a teenager.
It was, but I didn't really look at it that way because it was the only way that I knew.
That's true.
Yeah. My parents are fantastic. I had very open, if I had a problem, I could have gone to them. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any fear whatsoever that I would feel rejection or anything like that. This was all an internal battle with me. Mm-hmm. It was just something that that I dealt with and had no idea I was dealing with it or anything until I started drinking. And then once I started drinking, then it
all
was
of a sudden
like,
you felt the difference.
Yeah, then it was like, holy cow, there's a whole nother world out there that I can feel different. And I drank through high school.
Drugs in high school?
Drugs, yeah.
You did?
I tried them.
What were some of the things you tried besides alcohol in high school?
I smoked weed and pills, and it wasn't like I was off to go get certain pills. It was just like, oh, what do you got? Okay, cool.
Yeah, an opportunity.
Yeah, it was more opportunistic.
Like painkiller.
Yeah, painkillers.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, painkillers.
So you did all through high school and you maintained grades, no problems with the parents or the laws?
No, I was incredibly gifted at hiding it. So I never got caught and never got in trouble.
Any of your friends?
They did a little. Yeah, a few of them did. But I was very careful because I worried about getting caught. So,
Yeah, there you go.
so
Yeah.
and I say this, unfortunately, I didn't get caught. If I would have gotten caught earlier on in life and things, then
Who knows?
You'll hear later on why I say that. But unfortunately, I was very high functioning. I mean, I played baseball games drunk. I played, and I did really well playing those games. I mean, it was just something that I could do from the beginning, and no one would even know.
What was your family's culture or stance on things like drinking, smoking? Well, what were your parents' points of view on that?
Smoking was completely out of the question. But I didn't grow up in a religious home, but it was kind of funny. My parents were actually the most strict out of all of my friends' parents. I had to be home earlier. I had to be, they were more
Kept an eye on you.
Yeah, they did. And I'm the first child, so I mean that's kind of understandable. We're all kind of trying to fill this thing out together. Mm-hmm. My dad, he drank, or we'd have people over and they'd have some drinks, and it was never a problem.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't taboo.
No, my mom doesn't, my mom doesn't drink. She just doesn't like it. And she has some things with her dad that she saw that she doesn't like. So,
does that mean alcoholism ran in that side of the family, or
I would say unofficially?
Unofficially, yeah, that's how it usually is.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't
That's
don't
her
know.
story to tell.
Yeah, that's not my story to tell. But
you go through high school,
yeah.
And then do you go off to college, or?
So I my senior year in high school, I started off just like my junior year. I mean, I was drinking and doing drugs, whenever I could. And then I got more, I mean, in Utah, you don't necessarily get introduced to religion. It's just always there. It's always around.
Uh-huh.
But I actually gave it a shot, and I felt that same kind of calmness, I guess you could say. And I kind of realized that I really liked those feelings. And so I decided to pursue that. And I did. I stopped drinking and doing drugs, and I cleaned up. And a year later, I ended up serving an LDS mission in Mexico. But those feelings of anxiety and things came back, and it has, in my opinion, nothing to do with religion or pressures that were put on me. It was, if you look at my life, it was how I processed information from a kid.
We'd probably say you just had a biological predisposition towards anxiety. Anxiety and worry, it does have a very large biological component. How we think and process information is also huge.
Right.
So you build those habits as you grow up. But you probably started off I say a little bit, tuned a little bit higher than a lot of kids. You're just a little bit more anxious.
Yeah, and I could see that. And then and when I was out there in Mexico, I would just go crazy thinking, I didn't pray long enough, or I didn't do this right, or I'm not doing enough of this, or I'm not doing enough of that, and
there's a term for religious obsessive worry called scrupulosity.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes missionaries or other people that are highly involved in religious activities will start to obsess and worry about things, those sorts of habits, like praying and doing other things. And so that must have been hard as a missionary.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that's your full-time job. And,
every day.
And an important job.
Yeah, that's your full-time job, and I had fun.
Look who your boss is.
Yeah. It's hard to get away with anything.
But I mean,
You're not
I'm
sweeping
joking.
anything under the rug.
I'm joking, but it's not like you're checking in 5 minutes late. I mean, and a young man and all that stuff. I mean, that is a recipe for anxiousness.
Yeah, and I wanted,
To do a good job.
Yeah, I wanted to do a good job. I mean, anything that I had done, I wanted to do. I wanted to do great, and as egotistical as it sounds, I wanted to be the best I could be, and the best I could do.
Yeah.
But I feel like that went overboard. On the other side of things, where it becomes unhealthy because I want to do everything perfect, and you have that expectation, which you will fall short of every single time. Every day you will fall short of that expectation, or I will, anyways, I should say, and that creates the situation where the anxiety and depression feed off of each other, and it just builds and builds. But I was able to go do that, and I came home, and I got into work, I got into school, and school started. This is when it first started. Before, I was able to mask it. I was able to hide it. Everything was great.
On your mission too?
Yeah, I was able to. No one knew what what was going on the inside. It hadn't affected my life so much on the outside that other people could tell. And it wasn't until one day I was trying to go to class, and I didn't understand this math class. Like it was just way too over my head. And I'm walking to the class, and I start to just hyperventilate, and I feel like there's just this huge pain in my chest, and I get to the door of the class, and I could not walk through that door. And I just turned around, and I went and I sat on a bench for the whole class period.
You're listening to Project Recovery. More with Cole coming up.
A stranger with a gun came upon two teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
So that's a panic attack.
Yeah, it sounds like a panic attack to me.
And if you've never had a panic attack, you can't get out of your body quick enough. You would do anything just to relieve that feeling. My older brother, he got them way before I did, and I used to think I was like, well, "You're crazy, just stop." But once you have that panic attack, I mean, it takes over.
Yeah, and for listeners, stats in America, almost 80%.
He just said he's not good at math.
I know, but he's getting better, right?
Okay.
I am.
This is exposure. We call this exposure therapy. Okay. We're talking math. Almost 80% of American adults will have at least one panic attack in their life. So people listening, they know that is one of the most miserable experiences, right?
Yeah, it was horrible, and that started happening in that one class. That started happening almost on a daily basis.
Becomes associated with that experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when I could get myself to power through the door and actually sit down in my chair, the teacher he'd be rattling off all this stuff, and I'd be like, "Oh wait, I didn't get that." And in my head, I'm starting this dialogue like, "Okay, what did he try to say, and what?" And then I'd say, "Oh crap! Well, I missed the next thing," and then I missed the next thing because I couldn't focus on.
Couldn't catch up.
I couldn't catch up, and so finally I ended up. That was the first I failed that class, and I was living at my parents' house at the time. I was just going to the local college, and that's when they saw that I had failed my math class, and they were like, "Hey, what's up with this?" And I finally broke down and told them, kind of what had gone on with that, and So I reduced all my classes to one class, and I just kind of threw myself more into work. I was working for a bank. I met my wife at this time, and we started dating, and life started to kind of go quicker. About a year after coming home from Mexico, I decided that I wasn't going to go anymore to church, and I met my wife. We got married. A little bit after that, I started my own insurance agency because I realized school was just probably not in the cards for me. I started my own insurance agency, and then 2 years later I started my insurance agency and had our daughter in the same year.
No pressure there.
No. And so that right there, all of that together, I mean, it just, now my income is based on commissions. Now I've got, before I just had myself to worry about.
Yeah.
And to make sure that I was, able to maintain, and now I've got two people that I have to worry about, and a job that is basically like a baby, and I'm starting it from scratch. And I was not mentally prepared for the stress that would cause. And what do I do that I've seen throughout my whole life is I find those ways to escape. And I had kind of started drinking at this time, just one-off deals, but I wasn't doing any drugs or anything. It just, but then it became where my wife would go to bed because she has to wake up really early. And on Wednesday nights, I would go and play basketball way late at night. And before I would go buy a bottle of liquor, and I would go play basketball, and then I would have my Wednesday nights to myself. No one's calling me. I don't have to be there for anyone. I don't have to do anything for anybody else. And I would just sit on my couch and drink till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would just watch TV.
Did she know you were drinking?
No, she did not. I hid that from her because she also has experiences, and she didn't, she's not religious in any way, but she didn't like
she has
alcohol.
Her own issues
she
with
didn't like alcohol in the family, or in the house. And so,
well, anybody that grows up with friends or family that suffer with alcoholism, whether they're religious or not, they start to want to distance themselves from that.
Right. And it wasn't allowed in our house. It wasn't,
she would have been really disappointed in you.
Extremely disappointed in me. Yes.
So every Wednesday night you'd kill a bottle and watch reruns till 3 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much what I did.
Now, did that seem to keep the anxiety at bay? Is it something that you looked forward to every Wednesday? And so
Wednesdays were my favorite day of the week. Absolutely. I mean, that was like my weekend, and I wasn't able to keep the anxiety at bay because you wake up the next morning and you gotta put that face on, and you gotta go back out and you gotta do the same thing over again, So it really was only a relief for that
few hours.
Short period of time, right? But then I started realizing, I could have a beer during the day or at lunch or something like that, or I could get that feeling in the day, and then I could go, and then I could work, then I could go work and I could function and I could do it, because this is the thing, and nobody knew, but I could go get a little buzz, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, let's get some stuff done.
Yeah.
Let's.
And you're selling, right, at work. It's all commission, and you have to interact with people a lot. So you're kind of self-medicating that anxiety with drinking during the day now.
Right. And that so slowly started to kind of creep into, and if you're an insurance agent, I mean, I had bosses, but really, like, I did my own thing all day, every day. And
set your own schedule.
Set my own schedule. I mean, I'm 25, 26 years old, And
you can meet these clients at restaurants, take them out golfing. I mean, anywhere
Right,
really,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
it was
if it was and I started, as things progressed, I started to need more and more to get to that point where I was like, okay, like let's work and let's do this. Until
we had Randall Carlisle on, and he said towards the end he'd have to have 3 beers in the morning just to steady his hand so he could shave.
Oh yeah, I got there. Yeah,
But I think that just speaks to needing more and more just to get back. And you're not at this point. You're not really even getting drunk. You're just getting normal.
Yeah,
as we say. I mean, on the outside looking in, it doesn't look normal, but in our minds, in our heads, in our bodies, I need this just to get normal.
Right. And I didn't think it was a problem, which 99.9% of the people I've come across who are alcoholics, they had that point in time where they didn't think it was a problem at all. And it was just something that I didn't think much about it, to be honest with you. It was just something I felt like I needed to do, and then I would be able to go about my day. And alcoholism, it's a progressive disease. It never goes backwards. It always just motors on forward, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And my story is not any different than anybody else you've had on here. It increased and increased, and I needed more, and I started drinking earlier and earlier, and money stopped coming in, and because I wasn't selling a lot, and as that pressure kind of built, that was another thing that kind of built on me. So now I need more, and now I'm still trying to hide all of this from my wife. I had bottles everywhere. I was drinking every night, most days, and it got to the point where the money was so scarce, and I always had a really viable excuse as to why.
We're good at excuses.
Yeah. I always had, people could see I was starting to kind of lose weight, and they were starting to kind of see, but it was stress, or it was, I always had
an answer.
Something that people could logically be like, okay, I get that. You're starting a business, you're young, who's going to want to talk to a 26-year-old about, life insurance? Not a whole lot of people. So they understood or thought they did what the true problem was. And, but I knew on the inside I was dying, and it took everything I had to just keep everybody at bay and hold everything together. And I remember this one time we had to move into a different house. We kept the house we were in and rented it out, but we had to move because I wasn't making enough money to make the mortgage. This goes by a dam, our house. I drove by a dam every day to get to work. And I remember driving, and all of a sudden in my head just said, you should just kill yourself. And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever said to myself. I immediately was like, wow, like this is like something is wrong here, and then I did the whole good self-talk and no, man, you're good. You got this. Everything's great. You're going to go and you're going to have a good day and don't think about that. That's stupid.
But you were surprised that thought even crept in?
Oh yeah.
Or that you even said it to yourself?
Yeah, I was. I was like, I thought, man, I'm going crazy here, And in my mind, I'm still thinking I have things mostly under control, and it's just this thing has to work out, and then everything will be good, and then this, I'm still trying to justify a lot of my actions to myself, not even to anybody else, but now I'm justifying these things that I'm doing to myself, and every day that thought would creep in, and every day I would entertain it just a little bit longer. Mm. And as more things piled on, and I was drinking more and more. At this point, I'm drinking every day from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed, depending on if I could hide the money enough to go buy alcohol. I would spend days just on the river fishing when I should have been working, but I just couldn't get myself to go. So I would wake up in the morning, and I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning shaking because I thought it was anxiety. In my head, this is all anxiety. What I didn't realize was I hadn't had my body's detoxing. I needed a drink, and I would figure out a way to go and get something to drink, and I would get as much as I could. And then when the liquor stores open up at 11 o'clock, there I was at 11 o'clock buying my first bottle. And that would most likely last me about, I don't know, a few hours. And then I would go back and buy another bottle. And then I would most likely get a few beers or an 18-pack or whatever I could afford for later on when I was at home and I could sneak out to the garage and go drink and do those things. So this process just happened every single day, and I entertained that idea more and more. Like, yeah, man, you should. You're nothing is going right.
But you're also isolating yourself. I mean,
right?
By going up there and fishing by yourself and not being around other people. I mean, it became your dirty little secret. It sounds like, because I mean that's what I did. I mean, I would go do just whatever was necessary to, like you say, put everybody at bay and go, no, I got this. But then when I was by myself, man, it was. You can't get in me quick enough.
Yeah, no, exactly. The second I was alone, it was, and I didn't want to talk to anybody during the day. And in sales, that's a bad thing to.
Not a good business plan.
No, that's not a good business plan. So financially, we're struggling. My wife is trying to hold everything together and keep everything, and she knows something's wrong, but she's going crazy because she has no idea what it actually is. Whether it's with me, our relationship was struggling. I thought I needed a pat on the back if I took the garbage out. I thought that was a big win for me on a day. She should really think I'm a great guy.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things and our life was just chaos. But you couldn't put a pin on what was causing this chaos. And, my daughter was 2 years old at this time. So, this whole process, 2 years into it, I developed this story in my head that I should kill myself. And it became it went from being the craziest thing I've ever said to myself to this is, that's supposed to happen. And I had talked myself into basically that this was my end. Like this is how I was going to go out. This was my destiny, or whatever you want to call it. This is what is supposed to happen in my life. I'm not supposed to be here.
Did it start to seem like the logical thing to do?
Absolutely, 100%. I could not imagine growing older. I couldn't imagine being an old man. I couldn't imagine turning 27. Like I couldn't fathom that was possible for me.
And suicidal thinking is so insidious in that way. You've laid it out perfectly for so many people who've had the same experience, where it goes from this crazy, disturbing thought that you wonder where it ever came from, and feeling like, oh, I must be going crazy because why would I ever think that?
Yeah.
To when a person's actively in suicidal thinking, they see all the logic in it. They think that's the most logical way to proceed. It's what should happen. It's their destiny, that sort of thing. And that's hard to deal with because if your own brain's telling you this is the right thing to do, I mean, it's odd, but we believe our own thoughts,
Right.
And so our own thoughts seem very personal and real.
Right. And it was completely real and logical, and I knew I couldn't tell anybody about it because they wouldn't understand, because there was no way for me to explain why this was logical, but that is how I truly felt. So I was going to lose my insurance agency. That was a given. It was over the holidays, and in 2012, and I just said, well, I'll get through the holidays, and then I'll do it. So we went through one of the most. I was absent. I mean, I wasn't there through Christmas and New Year's, and then 2013, January 3rd, I just said yes. Like this is all right. This is it. This is the day. So I found a pistol, and it didn't have any bullets in it. And so I thought, well, if I find the clip, then yeah, like I'm right, kind of a validation,
like putting it out to the world.
Yeah, like
somebody stopped me or not.
Exactly, and like a second later, I found the clip. So I was like, oh, okay, all right, well, here we go. So I just I drove to a park, and I sat there for a second, and I was so calm. Because like I said, if you feel like you're doing the thing that should happen, you're calm. I wasn't worried about it. And I didn't write a note. Nobody at this time would have ever even known why I did this. My wife included. It was just the logical next step in my life. So I took the safety off. I put it in my mouth. And I started to slowly pull the trigger, and it moved, and then it stopped. And when that stopped, all of a sudden, my calmness and everything just went out the door, and fear and just this panic just like shot into me. And I was just like, I had this moment of clarity that I hadn't had in who knows how long. That I was like, what did I just about do? What am I doing?
So you've got the gun in your mouth.
Yeah.
And you hear a little click.
It didn't click. It moved.
Uh-huh.
I felt the trigger move. I mean, triggers don't have to move very far. But it stopped. It moved and stopped, and I'm not going to get into. I don't know. I mean, maybe I backed off. I don't know.
But that moment of clarity came when the trigger stopped moving.
Right. And it stopped moving, and I put the gun down, and I called my wife, and I just said, we got to talk. Like, today was supposed to be the day that I wasn't going to be here anymore. And she called my dad, and I knew I was in for some pretty emotional stuff. So I went and I bought a case of beer, and I drove home, and I sat there with my case of beer and just waited for my mom or for my dad and my wife to come home. And I put the gun on the table, and I just waited and basically held my own intervention right there.
Is that how they found you when they came? Gun on the table, and
I didn't have it right there. I was like, man, I don't want to scare them, right? So I put it like in the counter in another, But I just was sitting there waiting.
And then
for
what
them.
happened when they came in?
We talked. My wife was, shocked, upset, mad. Just all the emotions in one.
The wheel of emotions is just spinning at that point.
Oh yeah, my mom and my dad, were there, and my dad made sure he got the gun. And then we just sat and talked, and we all just, and I just laid it out there. I didn't tell him everything, because I'm still blaming all of my actions on anxiety and depression. And I blame my wife for a lot of things and how she acted, and I blamed, not a lot of it was really me saying I screwed this up.
When we had our first meeting, we went to lunch. You said something that resonated with me that I still use when I'm talking to people. You say, "I'm being as honest as I can right now, as honest as I can allow myself to be."
Right.
And explain what you meant by that, because I think that's. For a lot of people coming through the other side and going through this dark space, we're being as honest as we can with ourselves and with you, but you're holding some stuff back.
Right. And okay, this is just my opinion, but I'm not a doctor or anything like that.
We got one here.
Yeah, we got one here, so he can tell. he can see. I guess we can get this validated if it's true. But from what I've been taught, we believe that emotions and behavior are, as a society views emotions and behavior like a switch. Okay, that you're either honest or you're not. And if you're not honest, bam, flip that switch, and you need to be honest now about everything. But there are things that we are so used to, our behavior, we are so used to hiding, we are so used to stowing away that we can be honest in every aspect of our life except for that one thing, and we don't know how to be. It's not a switch that's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to throw up all of this onto you and feel totally comfortable about it. We have to work on changing that behavior. And so, yeah, there's been times when my wife's like, well, what about this and what about that? And everything in my head was a lie, everything. And I was nowhere close to telling her what actually happened, because I have gone years building up inside of me these walls around this little dirty secret that I have that I don't want to let out.